They didn't even look back. I was 6 years old, sitting on the front porch with a plastic suitcase, clutching a ragged teddy bear. My father knocked once. When Nana opened the door, he didn't even say hello. He just said, "She's your problem. Now." And they left. No kiss. No apology. Not even a goodbye. I remember my grandmother's face. She looked at them like they were strangers, like she was trying to figure out if this was real. And when the door clicked shut behind them, she crouched down, gently touched my cheek and whispered, "Well, I guess you're stuck with me now, sugar." That was the beginning of everything. I didn't know how much I'd just lost, but I was about to find out how much I was about to gain. She didn't treat me like a burden. That first night, she made spaghetti with too much garlic and let me sleep in her bed. She read me a story with voices and sound effects, like it mattered. Like I mattered. I kept waiting for her to send me away, too. But she never did. Nana wasn't rich. At least, not in the way kids imagine. She drove a rusted red pickup, wore gardening gloves with holes in the fingers, and drank tea from chipped mugs that never matched. But she owned a small antique shop, Montgomery Treasures, tucked between a florist and a bookstore downtown. People said she had an eye for value. She said she had an eye for stories. "Everything's got a story," she used to tell me. Even the broken things, sometimes especially those. I didn't understand what she meant back then, but I do now. Growing up, she came to every recital, every school meeting, every birthday with a homemade cake and lopsided candles that always leaned left. When I got sick, she was there. When I got dumped at prom, she held me like it was her own heartbreaking. She filled every silence my parents left behind. I only asked about them once. Maybe I was 8 or 9. I said, "Why did they leave me?" Nana didn't lie, but she didn't poison me either. She just said, "Some people don't know what they have until it's gone, and some don't know how to hold love without breaking it." I didn't ask again. They never called, never sent a card, didn't even message me on my graduation day. At some point I stopped wondering, because I had her, and in every way that mattered, that was enough. But life, being what it is, doesn't let anything last forever. I started noticing her hands shaking when she poured tea. She forgot where she put things, her reading glasses, her keys, sometimes even the names of customers she'd known for years. At first, she laughed it off. Then, she stopped laughing. I took over most of the shop's work, told her to rest. More. But she'd still come in every morning like clockwork, just to sit behind the counter and hum softly to the radio. She never said she was scared, but I could feel it. Like something was unraveling. And she didn't want me to see. One morning, I walked into her room to find the window cracked open, the curtains swaying in the breeze, and her lying perfectly still under her quilt. Peaceful. Too peaceful. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, holding her hand. It was still warm. That was the moment the silence came back. Not the kind I had when I was 6, not confusion or fear. This was deeper, quieter, like the world had turned off its sound. She was 86, and she'd made arrangements for everything, left instructions for the service, the music, even which dress she wanted to be buried in, the navy one with the pearl buttons she used to wear on Sundays. The funeral was held in the same little chapel where she used to volunteer on weekends. It was simple, beautiful, just the way she wanted. I stood by the door and greeted every person who came through. Old shop customers, neighbors, even a couple of local librarians she used to trade books with. People shared stories. They cried. They smiled. It felt like a celebration of a real life well lived. And then, the click of heels, sharp, echoing across the wooden floor. I turned, and everything stopped. There they were, my parents. Like a scene from a dream, you wake up, sweating from, not because it scared you, but because it made no sense. My mother wore a black dress that looked straight off a runway. Pearl earrings, not a strand of hair out of place. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue she hadn't used before. Walking in, my father stood beside her. Sharp suit, polished shoes, a posture too proud for mourning. They hadn't seen Nana in nearly 2 decades, and yet they were here, front row, like they belonged. I didn't speak to them, didn't hug them, didn't acknowledge them, and they didn't seem surprised. Just entitled. They whispered to each other during the service. My mother leaned over once and said, "This place could have used better lighting." My jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd break a tooth. During the eulogy, I stood at the pulpit and tried not to shake. I talked about Nana's love for cinnamon, toast, and old radio music. How she never let me leave the house with wet hair. How she once gave away her winter coat to a woman in the shop who didn't have one. Not once did I mention my parents. But afterward, people asked them, "Oh, are you her son?" She talked about her granddaughter all the time. Didn't know she had other family. My father smiled and said, "Yes, we were close." My hands turned to fists in my coat pockets. They walked around like it was a networking event. Shaking. Hands, accepting sympathy. Smiling too widely. At one point, I saw my mother standing with 2 older women near the coffee table. She was laughing. Laughing. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. After the service, I helped clean up, gathered flower petals from the aisle, stacked hymn books, tried not to look at the 2 people who used to be my parents, because if I did, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stay quiet. Then came the part I didn't expect. Mr. Whitaker, Nana's lawyer, approached me with a folder in hand. "She left some very specific instructions," he said. "The will is to be read in person. Family must be present." I nodded. I already had a feeling she'd planned something. The next morning, I arrived early at his office. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and everything felt dim, like the world was still grieving with me. They were already there, my parents. Seated in the waiting area like 2 professionals waiting for a big interview. Except they weren't nervous. They looked confident, smug. My mother wore a beige blouse and red lipstick. My father nodded at me like we were distant co-workers who once shared an elevator. "Hope you're holding up," he said flatly. She was something. I said nothing. Mr. Whitaker opened the door and gestured us in. A long oak table stretched across the room. On it, a sealed envelope, thick, heavy, and marked with my grandmother's initials in deep red wax. Her handwriting was on the outside, to be read exactly as written. "Do not alter a word." We sat. My parents flanked me, one on either side. Too close. Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat, placed on his glasses, and said, "This will was updated just 2 months before Mrs. Montgomery's passing. She was clear, lucid, and very intentional." I noticed my mother straighten her posture. My father folded his hands like he was already calculating numbers. She asked me to read this aloud with no interruptions. He broke the seal. And the room, already quiet, went still. That's when I saw it, the small smile on Mr. Whitaker's face. The kind that says, "You have no idea what's coming." Mr. Whitaker unfolded the first page of the will slowly. Not for drama. He wasn't that kind of man. But with the kind of care that said, "This matters." That these words weren't just legal, they were personal. "To begin," he read, "let me thank those who truly showed up for me. In life, not just in death." I felt my throat tighten. My mother let out a little breath, like she was preparing herself to hear her name next. She didn't. To the friends who came into my shop week after week, to the woman at the library who never let me pay late fees, To the florist down the street who always let me take the last bunch of peonies. Thank you. No mention of her son. No mention of my mother. They both shifted in their seats. Then he turned the page. Now to my granddaughter. And my heart nearly stopped. You were the light I didn't know I needed. You arrived in my life because someone else walked away. But I've never once seen you as a replacement. You were my purpose. I could feel the tears rising, but I blinked them back. To you, I leave the entirety of Montgomery Treasures, the shop, the building, its accounts and contents. I also leave my personal bank holdings, investment, accounts and trust portfolio, which you'll find are more than modest. The total estimated value, approximately $50 million. My mother gasped. My father's mouth opened, then closed. It was the first time I'd ever seen him speechless. Mr. Whitaker paused, then slowly flipped to the next page. To my son and his wife. He looked up. For a moment, no one moved. My mother straightened again, as if preparing to accept what she clearly believed was hers. My father rubbed his palms against his slacks like they were already full of cash. You gave up your right to call me Mom the day you abandoned your daughter. Silence. You didn't write. You didn't visit. You didn't help. So to you both, I leave exactly $1 each. There was a sound. I'm not sure if it came from my father or mother. Somewhere between a scoff and a choke. My mother started to speak, but Mr. Whitaker raised his hand. There's more, he said gently. He continued reading. I leave you $1 not out of pettiness, but out of principle. I want you to know this isn't about revenge. It's about truth. And the truth is, you walked away from your child. I won't let you walk into her inheritance. I looked over and saw my father's knuckles go white against the arm of the chair. My mother was shaking her head, whispering something like, No, this isn't legal. This can't be right. But she didn't get up. Not yet. Because Mr. Whitaker wasn't done. He held up a small USB stick in a plastic evidence bag. Your mother asked me to record your absence. We have 18 years of records. Surveillance footage from the shop. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every Father's Day you never called. Every letter returned unopened. Every voicemail ignored. My heart was pounding. Not from anger. Not even satisfaction. But from something deeper. Closure. Then came the line that would stay with me forever. Mr. Whitaker closed the folder and said, She once told me, if they ever come back, don't shut the door. Just hand them the truth and let them decide whether they want to walk through it. And now, they had. My father stood up suddenly. We'll contest this, he said through clenched teeth. She wasn't in her right mind. She was old and she was sharper than both of you combined, I said quietly. He stopped, looked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. My mother rose slower. Her expression was different. Not angry, not outraged, just stunned. Like someone waking up in a place they didn't recognize. You really let her do this? She whispered. I didn't answer. Because I didn't need. Till they left together, not speaking, not holding hands anymore. Just two people who came with empty arms. And left with even less. Mr. Whitaker stood, buttoned his jacket, and said, She loved you. Fiercely. You were her everything. I know, I said softly. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like maybe that was enough. The office was quiet again. Like nothing had just happened. Like millions of dollars hadn't just been handed to a girl who'd grown up with secondhand shoes and microwave dinners. But I didn't feel rich. I felt full. Full of things that didn't come with a price tag. Truth, closure, love that didn't need to be spoken to be heard. Mr. Whitaker gave me the envelope with account details, keys to the shop, and a thick folder with legal documents. But on top of it all was a letter. Nana's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. Not there. With the scent of old wood and ink around me. Not with my parents' perfume still lingering in the air. No. Some words needed privacy. That night, I sat in the shop. Just me, the creaky floorboards, and the ticking wall clock Nana. Always forgot to wind. I hadn't been able to bring myself to lock up after the funeral. The lights were still on. The bell on the front door still jingled every time a gust of wind shook it. I sat behind the register in her old swivel chair, turned the letter over in my hands, and finally opened it. Sweetheart, it began. If you're reading this, then I've already caused a scene, just as I promised I would. I laughed through tears. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to see the look on their faces. But I hope Whitaker read it exactly how I told him to. Slow, firm, and with just the tiniest grin. You deserved better. And I wanted to make sure the world finally agreed with me on that. All those years, I saw how you carried yourself. You didn't just grow up. You grew into someone I would have been proud to be raised by. I had to stop reading for a moment. The chair made a soft creak as I leaned back. The shop was still, like even the antiques were holding their breath. Do something good with it, she wrote. Not because you owe me, but because it's who you are. And if you ever doubt yourself again, just remember, I chose you. Not by accident, not out of duty, but on purpose. I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry for the first time since she passed. Not the kind of cry that leaves you broken, but the kind that glues pieces back together. The kind that cleans something out of you. The kind that feels like coming home. The next morning, I knew exactly what to do. I reopened Montgomery Treasures. But I didn't change a thing. Same shop bell. Same mismatched teacups in the corner for regulars. Same handmade open sign she painted 20 years ago. But I added one new shelf, right by the register. A little wooden plaque that read, "For my, the ones who stayed." And on that shelf, I placed a small jar. Donations for a scholarship, for girls like me. Raised by someone who wasn't supposed to raise them, but did it anyway. The first donation came from the florist next door. She didn't even say anything. Just walked in, gave me a hug, and slipped a crumpled 20 into the jar. Within a month, we had enough for 3 books and a semester's worth of supplies. By Christmas, we had enough for a full ride. I named the fund after Nana, the Ruth Montgomery Legacy Grant, and every time a girl walked through the door and asked about it, I told them the same thing. It's not about how you started, it's about who never left your side. One day, I found something else tucked behind the counter. A tiny envelope. No stamp. No address. Just my name. Inside was a picture. Me, age 10, sitting on Nana's lap in the back office, icing a scraped knee, while she laughed like I'd just told the funniest joke in the world, on the back, in her handwriting. See? We were always rich. It was a Sunday afternoon when I found it. The sun streamed through the shop windows, catching dust motes like little sparks in the air. I was restocking a shelf near the back, the one Nana always said was her quiet corner. Behind an old ceramic owl and a chipped silver frame, I found a small worn leather book wrapped in ribbon. It had my name on a tag, not fancy, just a sticky note in her handwriting. For when you're ready. My hands trembled a little. I sat on the floor right there between 2 shelves and untied the ribbon. Inside the cover was a single line. This is the part I never got to say out loud. And then, page after page, her handwriting. The same soft cursive I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards, only now it was telling a story. I was scared when they left you with me. Not because I didn't love you, but because I wasn't sure if I still knew how to raise a child. I had lost your mother once already, long before she walked away. That line stopped me cold. She changed after she married your father. Got colder, sharper. Started measuring love by usefulness. I never knew how to reach her after that. When they brought you to me, I saw that same hurt in your eyes that I'd once seen in hers, before she stopped letting me see anything at all. But you opened up to me, slowly, then all at once. You let me in. I had to stop reading again. This was more than a letter. It was an emotional excavation. Her trying to explain, not just the what, but the why. Not for herself. For me. There were days I thought maybe I was doing it all wrong. That you'd grow up feeling half loved, half left. But then you'd fall asleep on my shoulder, or leave little notes in my apron that said, "You're my favorite grown-up." And I'd remember, love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be present. I didn't realize I was crying again until a tear hit the paper. There's something else you should know. I leaned in. The shop, the savings, none of it was an accident. I saved everything for you. I stopped taking a paycheck 20 years ago. I learned how to invest, took online classes at night, bought real estate in pieces. I pretended we were just getting by, because I didn't want you growing up thinking money was the goal. You were always the goal. I stared at the pages, stunned. She had played poor to teach me to value people. She'd worn thrifted cardigans and clipped coupons even when she had a portfolio that could buy a mansion. Not out of guilt, but out of choice. I wanted you to grow up believing in effort, believing that kindness was a currency, that generosity didn't have to be loud to be real. You're rich now, not just in money, in character. And I trust you to do something with both. That was the final page. No signature. Just a dried lavender sprig taped to the inside of the back cover. I sat there on the floor, the book pressed against my chest, and whispered, "You didn't just raise me. You built me." And she had, with quiet mornings, with cinnamon toast, with $1 thrift store dresses she hemmed by hand, with every lesson that money can't buy, and now, ironically, had helped her earn millions. I stood up, gently closed the book, and placed it on the shelf marked "Not for Sale," right next to a photograph of her in her 20s, smiling with a paintbrush in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. The next day, I changed the scholarship name. It was no longer just a fund. It became the Ruth Montgomery School of Second Chances, a real program, a partnership with the local college, housing, books, mentorship, for young women raised outside the lines, like me. And that's how it grew. Not just the shop, not just the scholarship, but me. I grew into something she would have loved to see. One evening, I walked home past the old diner she used to get pie from on Thursdays. I paused at the window and looked at my reflection, and for the first time in my life I saw her in me, the same strength, the same softness, the same stubborn kindness. And I smiled, because I knew she hadn't just left me something to live on. She'd left me something to live for. Spring came early that year. The cherry blossoms downtown bloomed faster than usual, spilling pink petals across the sidewalks like confetti from a celebration no one planned. It had been 4 months since Nana's funeral. 4 months since the reading of the will. 4 months since I watched my parents walk out of that lawyer's office with a single dollar each and nothing else. And in that time, I'd learned a truth that hit harder than money ever could. Justice doesn't always have to shout. Sometimes, it just has to stand its ground. The shop was thriving again. Customers didn't just come for antiques now. They came to see the girl who inherited a fortune and turned it into something more. Reporters called. Local papers wrote features. The scholarship fund got attention from schools in other towns. One woman even drove 3 hours just to shake my hand and say, "My grandmother raised me too. Thank you for making people like her visible." And as for my parents, I heard whispers. They'd tried to meet with another lawyer, said they were contesting the will, but Nana had locked everything down. Video proof, signed affidavits, character witnesses from 3 states, and of course, that one little dollar bill each, signed, dated, and notarized. They never got far. Eventually, their names faded from the news. Their calls went unanswered. And one afternoon, I opened an envelope with no return address. Inside were the $2 bills, folded, unmarked, returned. No note, just silence. I didn't reply. What was there to say? They'd come for money. She gave them the truth instead. And that was the real inheritance they never wanted. One Sunday, I closed the shop early and took a walk through the park where Nana used to sit and sketch. I brought a thermos of tea and a notebook. Not to write anything in particular, just to sit where she sat, to breathe the same air and let memory do its work. A little girl ran past me chasing a red kite. Her grandmother sat on the bench nearby, laughing with her whole face. I smiled. It felt familiar. As the sun dipped lower, I pulled out the last thing I had from that day at the lawyer's office. A copy of Nana's will. I'd never reread it. Until then. The page had yellowed a bit from being in my bag, but the words still rang clear, especially the last line. To my granddaughter, I leave everything I built and everything I became. Because she gave me back something I thought I'd lost. A reason to believe that love can skip generations and still arrive exactly on time. And then I remembered something Mr. Whitaker had said that day. Right after the reading, once, my parents had stormed out and the room had gone quiet. He looked at me and said, almost to himself, I knew she was planning something. But when I saw that part about the dollar, I couldn't help it. He chuckled, shook his head slowly, and added, that was when I laughed. That was the moment the title became real. Not for shock, not for drama, but for truth. Because when you strip it all down, the abandonment, the betrayal, the money, this story wasn't about wealth, it was about value, and who decides it. Nana decided mine long before I ever knew I had any. She measured me not by what I'd lost, but by what I refused to stop giving. So now, whenever someone new walks through that shop door, I welcome them the same way she used to, with a warm hello, a cup of tea if they need it, and a reminder, taped behind the counter, just for me. We weren't lucky. We were chosen. And if you're wondering if I ever forgave my parents, the answer is, I didn't need to. They never broke me, because Nana never let them. She gave them $1. She gave me everything. And when that lawyer laughed, I didn't. I just remembered the woman who always smiled quietly and let life speak for her. If this story moved you, even just a little, take a moment to hit that like button. And if you've ever been saved by someone who didn't have to, someone who showed up when others walked away, subscribe. Because here, we tell stories that remind us, family isn't always who raised you, it's who stayed.